Welcome to Healnlearn. Welcome to Grow and Learn. This is Zorina. Today we're going to be speaking about a topic that is gaining traction in recent years. We're going to be speaking about gut health. It's linked to mental health. We're going to be speaking about health in general, sleep, links to autism. My guest is a very well-versed health practitioner. The exact certification that he has is a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. He's also author of the book Autism Wellbeing Plan, How to Get Your Child Healthy. So today I am welcoming Christian Yordanov, a fellow countryman, but living in Portugal at the moment. Hi, Christian.
Hi, Zarina. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a great pleasure to be conversing with someone from my own country. I don't think that's ever happened on a podcast yet.
It's my pleasure. And especially with this subject, I haven't had a lot of people speaking about bodily health on Heal and Learn. I think I've had about 2 people so far overall speaking about nutrition on the channel. So I'm really excited about our talk today. Where do we start? You have such a wide grasp of nutrition, health, dieting, and its effects on health. Let's start with autism, because this is a very burning topic. I know that autism has increased about 30 times since the 80s, which is an amazing growth in this. It's not a disability, it's a condition, let's call it condition.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know what it is truly, because maybe 100 years ago or thereabouts, they were saying that it was 1 in 10,000 cases, and then maybe in the 50s, maybe it was 1 in 5,000 cases. I don't really keep up with the stats anymore, but places like New Jersey, I believe it's 1 in 24. With the current trends that it's going, they're estimating that it could be literally 1 in 2, 1 in 3 children this century at some point. So anybody that comes out and disingenuously starts talking about genetics, this, genetics, that, is either ignorant or purposefully trying to confuse people. Genes take hundreds of thousands, millions of years, or at least tens of thousands of years to change in such a dramatic way. And to tell anybody that we just have better diagnostic methods is again disingenuous, because also all the other conditions and diseases have been increasing rapidly in the last 100 years, from Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, and many of these we have early onset Alzheimer's now in people in their 40s. Many of these conditions, people are getting them earlier and earlier. So it's clearly something in our modern world that is contributing to this. And it doesn't really take much research to figure out what it is. It's the really poor nutritional status of people. A lot of these moms of the kids are in a very poor state of health. Now, it's very easy to look at a person and say, "Oh, well, someone's 25, they don't really look unhealthy." When you're young, I remember how when I was young, I could do a lot of silly things, drinking, partying, and you would look fine, you would perform okay with your mind, your body, but that's on the surface. Deeper down, there's a lot of dysfunction going on. A lot of these girls that are having kids nowadays, they may be plant-based, or have had a vegan diet, or just poor nutrition, or a lot of toxic exposure, all these personal care products, being in big cities with all the pollution. So a lot of these moms are in a poor state of health. Some of them are already on medications, and that is translating into suboptimal health of the fetus that grows. And then these kids are born and they have very poor nutrition. Many families are just not taught what good nutrition is and how to protect their kids from all the toxins in the environment. So I think those are really the biggest drivers of all of the conditions. Really are very simply, we live in a very toxic world. Most people haven't learned how to protect themselves from the toxic onslaught. And in tandem with that, and the aggregate of humanity, our nutritional status is very poor due to the poor diet and the just really bad for agricultural practices since the introduction of the big agri, pesticides, herbicides, mass production, GMOs. This has really destroyed the food supply. So we live in a time where you have to be really conscientious of what you're putting in your body and what you're exposed to. Otherwise, it's inevitable that you will succumb to some type of condition or disease eventually.
You're also a specialist on detoxification, and now it seems that a large portion of the malnutrition is actually due to intoxication or toxicity, which also prevents the absorption of nutritious elements. So that means that there's an additional environmental effect, nutritional effect that causes, that is flooded with these heavy metals that causes their condition.
Absolutely. You really know your stuff. I'm quite impressed. So not only is there obviously the toxic metals in the environment and the toxic chemicals, of which there's over 100,000 that have been synthesized and released into the environment since basically the beginning of last century. But we also have another thing that too many people think is benign, and that is the polyunsaturated fatty acids in the diet. Now they have grown in terms of our caloric consumption of them, proportionally they've grown tremendously over the last 150 years, right? And I believe it's one of the biggest drivers of disease. You know what I mean?
What are some foods that contain this? Can you give us an example?
Sure. So I think most people know, like, vegetable oils like canola or rapeseed, as it's known more in Europe, corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, which is in Europe, it's mostly sunflower oil that's used a lot. In the USA, it's, corn and soybean oil are used quite a lot. So these oils, first of all, if you eat out in restaurants, or you order takeaways, or you buy processed food, you are getting exposed to a lot of these oils. Now, if you cook most of your meals at home, which is the ideal, and you don't buy these oils, it's a great step. But a lot of people forget that what did these oils come from? So they came from sunflower seeds, right? Or from nuts. So if you eat a lot of seeds and nuts and some grains, you're actually getting quite a lot of these as well. So in my opinion, in my sort of educated view, is I don't believe nuts, seeds, grains, and beans in large quantities should make up a healthy diet. I honestly, a lot of people understand gluten is not that good. Some people don't do well with beans, but somehow we have a lot of epidemiological data that associates nut consumption with good health, but there could be a lot of confounding variables there. I did a show on a podcast episode, why I don't eat nuts, seeds, grains, and legumes most of the time. And I talk about the various anti-nutrients that are in these nuts and seeds. So we have oxalic acid or oxalates, phytic acid, tannins, phytoestrogens. We have a couple of other things, enzyme inhibitors. So in their raw form, obviously, a bean you cannot eat raw, a grain you cannot eat raw. So I'm not sure why people think that eating a raw nut or a raw seed is that good. A nut or a seed, that's the baby of the plant. It's highly protected. The plant wants you to eat the fruit. That's why the fruit is sweet, colorful, and smells great. And then you can take the seeds and poop them out and, start a new plant there. But they protect the seeds with various toxins. So that's one aspect of it. If you cook the seeds and the nuts and the grains and the beans, you inactivate a lot of these lectins and other anti-nutrients. But if there are, let's say, hazelnuts or almonds or peanuts, if there are omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids in there, which there are, you're actually oxidizing or damaging those. And if you take them in their damaged form, you're using up your body's antioxidants to prevent damage from occurring. And then when you deplete that, you now are just creating damage. The more of these you eat, the more damage occurs. And this is what is damaging the endothelial lining of the blood vessels, leading to atherosclerosis. This is what's damaging our brain cells, because these fatty acids, the body has no choice. It's using the building blocks that are coming in. So it will make cell membranes, it will make neurons or repair neurons with these very unstable fatty acids. And the more of an unhealthy state a person is in, the more oxidative damage goes on in the body, the more of these are going to get damaged, these polyunsaturated fatty acids, more damage, more inflammation, and it becomes a vicious cycle. And if you put a bad diet on top of that, if you put toxicity from the environment that an extra toxicity because people don't eat organic, or they don't filter their water, or they drive in traffic every day, that creates an even bigger load on the person, and your body keeps compensating until the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then people suddenly one day get diagnosed with this, that, or the other.
But from what I've recently read is that acids, unsaturated acids, are actually vital for the development of the brain. So what would you recommend that people, or would you recommend completely taking it out of the diet, unsaturated acids, or would you recommend an animal origin unsaturated acids? So
I
what
don't,
would it be
other than in a laboratory setting, you cannot take unsaturated fats out of the diet. It's pretty much impossible. Everything has some, even coconut oil, which is mostly saturated fat, has a little, maybe a couple of percent polyunsaturated. Olive oil has 10 to 12. If you eat grain-fed meat, that's going to have. So it's the studies are showing that even if you do need some of these omega-6s, it's a couple of grams a day. The fact is that most people are eating 20, 30, 50, 70, 90 grams of these a day. And we have to remember that these certain omega-6s, they are literally precursors to inflammatory mediators in the body. So inflammatory molecules that create inflammation, eicosanoids, leukotrienes, prostaglandins, thromboxanes is some of the major ones. And the more of these you take, the more potential for inflammation there is to be created in the body. So it's, yes, maybe we need a little bit, but even I have this fairly old textbook on nutrition, advanced nutrition and human metabolism. It was published in 2006. And in there, even like, 17 years ago, roughly, they were saying that arsenic, the heavy metal or the toxic metal arsenic, in very small amounts might have a biological role in the body. So it could be that even mercury, or maybe all the metals, all the elements on Earth, in uranium even, maybe a few micrograms or somewhere, maybe in certain regions of the brain, might be essential. But it's the fact that we have released such a plethora of them that is just too much. So it's the same with these omega-6s. Maybe some of them are essential, but even amino acids, which are essential for building blocks of the body, too much of a certain amino acids like arginine or methionine or cysteine or tryptophan, they've been shown to have either inflammatory or carcinogenic or some other type of deleterious effect. So point being, to answer your question, is you will probably never be deficient in these things, even if you try your hardest to exclude them from the diet.
I see. And recently I also received yet another email for the update of YouTube community rules, where they state you're not allowed to speak anymore about blood type based diets. What is your opinion on that? Is this related to the processing of these fatty acids? Does it matter actually what blood type you are and what exactly you're consuming? Do you have any observation on that?
Actually, I was asked this again, this before on a podcast. I haven't researched it. It's on my to-do list. I will buy the book that's all about the blood type diet, but I cannot comment at this time. I believe the blood type does matter in many ways. It's like having certain genes. I have certain genetic variations that predispose me to certain diseases. And I have those in my family, like depression, atherosclerosis, stuff like that. So we actually have those in my family. So I believe blood type similarly will have advantages and disadvantages. And I'm not sure if enough research has been done that we can actually apply it in our everyday life, but it's a good question.
Okay, interesting. Because theoretically you could synthesize and break down different nutrients a different way. So for some people, I'm just theorizing here. I don't know.
No, you're on the right track for sure.
So let's talk the real meat now. Give us something for detoxification of heavy metals. What are some of the basic things people can do, either for to detoxify from vaccines for children, for autism? I know you have a program for helping parents deal with this condition in children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of things people can do that are quite simple. Actually, this time last week, roughly, I got an idea for my next book. It will be called something along the lines of shortcuts to better health, longevity, and mental performance. Right. So I got the idea last week, and I've already started jotting down ideas for the book, and it's all about shortcuts, right? So there's a lot of things we can do the right, quote unquote, the right way, long term. Like reducing toxic exposure is number one. You will never be able to out detox a poor diet and lifestyle, right? But in my book, I'm going to cover some of the stuff that I'll touch on here, because I believe more people need to know. And some of these things are so simple. It's as simple as buying a few supplements and remembering to take them daily, right? So we have to think about how does the body detoxify things. It detoxifies things using nutrients and energy. Nutrients being vitamins, minerals, and amino acids mostly, and energy being, converting glucose or fat into ATP, and just converting food into usable energy in the body. So we need to provide that. So the first thing, like if I have a client that I see has a lot of, let's say, heavy metals in the hair, or sometimes we do other testing that shows indicators of poor detoxification, the first thing we do is start remineralizing the body. My excuse me, my clinical experience basically has shown that most people are very depleted in terms of minerals. Now that's partly because the over farming on the same pieces of land, the same crops. So you might, let's say you're growing carrots. First season they'll extract some of the, let's say, manganese and the zinc and other calcium, magnesium. So every year after you extract those plants from the soil that you grew them in, every year there's less and less minerals. And yes, like organic farmers, they will buy like mineral mixes and they'll throw them back in, phosphates, but usually it's very few things are replenished back into the soil. So it's NPK, so nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are kind of the basis of many industrial grade fertilizers. So a lot of the nutrition in terms of the minerals is not being reapplied back to the soil. And the fact that the human population has increased so much in the last 150 or 200 years, it just means we're creating more out of less every year. So what I do is usually the first couple of minerals I add to somebody's diet will be zinc and magnesium. And especially with women, and especially people that don't eat dairy or eat very little dairy, I always add calcium and magnesium in a specific ratio, 2-to-1, with a little bit of vitamin D to help with absorption. Now, you know that women are at higher risk for osteoporosis and all these sort of osteopenia things. So I really think it's important to add the calcium to the diet if the person can't tolerate dairy and things like that. So what you start doing when you add the minerals back into the diet is certain toxic metals start getting pushed out, because if you're low in zinc, the body literally sometimes cadmium can take the place where zinc would be, or if you're low on calcium, lead can displace calcium in the bones. So when you start adding things, the body is using enzymes and its infinite intelligence. It can see, okay, I have more zinc coming in. I can push this cadmium out of here and replace it, and this enzyme will work better. In fact, certain like cadmium can do some of zinc's jobs due to the similar molecular structure, but not as efficiently, maybe 60% as efficiently. So the body's, this is one of the things that still amazes me to the day. The body will take a less or a suboptimal compound or atom to do the job not as well, but it's better than not doing. It's like when if you have a hole in your wall and you don't have any bricks and cement, you take a Coke bottle and you just jam a Coke bottle in there, so the rain and the wind can't come through. It's not optimal, but it's doing the job for now. So
But you
this is
have the side effects then of this replaced element.
exactly. So these are, they're highly inflammatory. For example, cadmium, if it gets incorporated into not just cadmium, toxic metals, if they get incorporated into things like blood vessels, they can cause arterial stiffness. They can contribute to higher blood pressure, less elasticity. So many things. Obviously, if they get in the in the brain and the nervous system, they're gonna wreak absolute havoc there. So, but the adding the minerals into the diet starts this process. In fact, some people already, just with the minerals and maybe some B vitamins, a good B complex, they already start to experience symptoms of detoxification.
What are some of the symptoms? Can you share with us how people can recognize them?
Sure. So these we can also often see when people start, let's say if you have a lot of gut dysbiosis going on and you start, let's say, taking antimicrobial herbs and some probiotics, sometimes you can get fever, you can just feel fatigued, or you can feel with toxic metals, you can feel hyperactive and then fatigued sometimes. So there's actually like maybe 3 dozen different things that you can experience. You can experience anxiety for a while. You might not be able to sleep. You could have a high temperature, because a high temperature it decreases the viscosity of the water in the cells, so things can flow out more easily. That's another detoxification mechanism. So there's really just a general feeling of malaise, fatigue, this kind of stuff. You can, in those cases, what we recommend is reducing. Let's say it's just minerals the person is taking, just reduce the protocol you're taking. Similarly with amino acids, we can get a lot of boost to the detoxification systems. And if these sort of detox reactions, these cleansing reactions occur, we always again turn the dial back a little bit. And some of my favorite amino acids for this purpose are glycine, which is the simplest amino acid in the body, but it actually it's part of one of our sort of main antioxidants in the cells, one of the most powerful antioxidants, called glutathione, which is made of glycine, cysteine, and glutamate, right? So glycine, generally, all of these things are supposed to come from the diet, but in the this is another sort of drawback of the modern world, which is why this will be part of my book, talking about the importance of glycine. Is we used to eat, quote unquote, nose to tail. So you eat the cartilage, even the skin, the bones would be boiled down. You wouldn't waste a whisker off of an animal. The sinew you would make rope from, you would make drums or clothes from the hide, and you would eat every gelatinous part from the animal. And like an animal is 50% gelatin, basically, when you know, proportionally. So we're a lot of the trend now is to eat, chicken breasts, lean meats, lean red cuts of meat, and we're not getting a lot of glycine. And this glycine is part of the collagen structure. It's about a third of collagen, so it's good for the skin, it's good for the joints, it's good for bone health, because bone is actually 40% collagen. It's not just calcium, it's not just this hard mineral thing. It's a living tissue with 40% collagen, which means that bone is about I guess 10 to 13% glycine. Insane, right? So when you look at a woman that is experiencing some type of osteoporosis or something, usually my first hunch is this woman or person did not eat a lot of calcium containing foods for a long time, and probably not a lot of collagen. And what the body is so amazing, it will use these glycine and calcium, it will rob the bones in order to maintain more vital functions, like the immune system, keeping the heart and the brain working. So it will do that for a very long time. And this is, again, another reason why we cannot look at a person and say, you are healthy, everything is fine. Not in the modern world anymore. We can't do that anymore, because you can look healthy. In the meantime, your body is robbing, almost cannibalizing itself to maintain the vital functions. And then you look at a person in their 70s, 80s. If someone looks very aged and someone next to them looked like we went to this homeopath here in, I think in April. I tell you, this guy was like 80, he told me, or 81. He looked maybe like he was 60. He was tall, he was lean, he was strong. His skin was glowing and perfect. His skin was gorgeous. I was like, dude, your skin. So that is a sign of somebody that has been taking really good care of themselves nutritionally, right? So glycine is probably such a simple thing. You can get it by the kilogram for like 20 euro. And it's such a simple thing. You can put it in your food. You can put it in your shake in the morning. And I think minerals and glycine is a very good starting step. I'll pause here in case you want to ask some other question.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask about people who have a vegetarian diet, because there are also claims that your acidity of the blood raises when you consume meats, also any kind of dairy as well, dairy, but meats specifically, that increases the acidity of the blood, and this causes, all the related diseases. So what is your take on the vegetarian diet?
I've done the vegetarian and vegan for about a total of 2 years of my life, and I've looked into it a lot, and I work with people that are ex-vegetarians and vegans, and invariably those people are coming to me with a lot of health problems. So I do not believe, especially the fully plant-based diet is anywhere near the optimal diet for humans. You can do vegetarian. I noticed, for example, I started drinking a lot of milk again recently, nice organic goat milk. And I've been eating a lot less meat, and I still feel really good. The problem is now I'm addicted to this goat milk because it's so nice. But I believe you can do vegetarian if you eat plenty of eggs and cheese and milk, but without those proteins. Without the fact is that, like I said earlier, a lot of plant foods contain a lot of anti-nutrients. Like if you look at spinach, that is, in terms of its oxalate content, the highest oxalate containing food, and it's a bomb of oxalate. And if you look at especially if it's raw, if you look at the bioavailability of calcium in spinach, it's about 5%. In milk, it's about 27%. So you know, if you look at the nutritional profile of a lot of plant foods, you are absolutely not absorbing those a lot of those nutrients. Like in beans, I think the protein bioavailability is closer to 50 to 60%, whereas milk is I think 95. I think it has the best protein bioavailability. And meat is probably, I think it was like 86 or something like that. And we should never forget that there are things in animal products that do not exist in the animal kingdom, like things like creatine, which is used in almost every cell, taurine, which is another amino acid that you can buy as to help with detoxification and heart health and eye health. But meat is a good source. So if you're vegetarian or vegan, taurine and glycine are really good to have, and creatine. Then don't forget the fat soluble vitamins. So they say, carrots are a good source of vitamin A. Well, come on, they're not. It's beta carotene. There's the carotenoids. These are provitamins, so they have to get converted into vitamin A. And I've tested myself and my wife's genes, and we actually, those genes, we have polymorphisms that actually slow down the conversion. So it's not as simple as, this has vitamin A, or this plant food has calcium. And a lot of these minerals or vitamins are in there, not in the right form for an animal, right? And there's a lot of conversions that sometimes have to happen in order for that to become bioavailable. And then vitamin D, K, A, these are in animal products. The vitamin E, conversely, the best source is animal foods for humans, but a lot of it comes either in nuts and seeds or in the vegetable seed oils. And the thing is that the more of those that you eat or ingest, the higher your vitamin E requirement goes. So if you reduce those, you won't need on paper, you won't need as much vitamin E because there's not as much oxidation occurring. The problem is that if anyone stops today all the polyunsaturated fatty acids, all the seed oils, all the nuts and seeds, the stuff you've stored on your body, that will be there. Some people say as long as 4 years, other people say as long as 7 years. And that actually means you still have to take vitamin E. And this will be something that I'm going to write about in my next book, is the importance of vitamin E in today's world, given how much of these omega-6s we're eating on a daily basis, whether we do it knowingly or not.
So that means that you don't recommend the intake of omega-6, omega-3 supplements?
So omega-6, definitely not. I personally am trying to reduce, again, they're in everything to an extent, most things a little bit. I'm trying to reduce as much as possible the intake of those. Omega-3s, it's a hard one. The omega-3s are like the darling of the sort of the research world. If you badmouth omega-3s, you're gonna get slapped, called a heretic. And the thing is, we do eat. We are eating a lot of what's it? Hake roe, fish eggs, and sardine roe. So we were big fans of that. And when my wife was pregnant, I was giving her cod liver oil and fish oil, and cod liver in cans. I have a load of those, but recently I've stopped opening up. I used to open up a can every 2-3 days and share it between myself, my wife, and my daughter. Now I'm doing that less and less. The thing about omega-3s, and I'm not saying people shouldn't take them, but they're actually even more fragile than omega-6s. So the most important thing is we don't get so many omega-3s, a bit of fish here, a bit of maybe linseed or whatever, walnuts. We don't get as many of those. So I wouldn't worry too much about those, but I would most certainly think about taking a full spectrum vitamin E complex, because again, those are even more fragile due to their structure than omega-6s. So we want to make sure we have the vitamin E, that antioxidant, to structurally protect us from oxidation. And the less healthy a person is, the more compromised their health, the more dangerous it becomes for them, right? So if you're in a good state of health, some omega-3s, even some omega-6s shouldn't be a problem, especially if you're taking vitamin E. But if you're in a compromised health state, I would be very careful. I would probably take the omega-6, pause that, take vitamin E for a while to replete your vitamin E status, take some other things like the things I already discussed, glycine, minerals, just kind of improve your antioxidant system, your detoxification system, and then probably reintroduce the hopefully it was a very high quality fish oil or omega-3 supplement.
Okay. I think you may have lost me a little bit there in the explanation, because I didn't quite understand. Maybe you can give us some insight on why is it bad that omega-3 and omega-6 are unstable? Does that mean that they're not usable for the body? They get excreted immediately? Is this what you mean?
Well, if you look at a saturated fat, it has hydrogens basically everywhere. It's kind of filled up, and the more unsaturated a fat is, the less of these hydrogens it has, and the more sort of the more omega, or the lower the omega number, the more bendy it is, right? So monounsaturated are less bendy. For example, the omega-3s are always liquid, right? You can't freeze them. They're designed for creatures that live in the Arctic, like certain fish and whatever, so they don't solidify. The monounsaturated, like olive oil, if you put olive oil in the fridge, you can't get it to start not crystallizing, but sort of getting stiffer. Saturated fat, you have to heat it in order for it to start sort of becoming liquid. So the fact that and here's another, just to give another example. People know that you use butter or coconut oil to fry with, because it's a more stable fat. The more of these unsaturation points a fat has, the more places you can have where oxygen or free radicals can come and attach and do damage, right? So when you have a lot of these unsaturated fats in the body, you have more points of contact for oxidants or free radicals or reactive oxygen species to attach and do damage. And the problem is, if you damage one place, kind of in a manner of speaking, if you damage one place, it's kind of like a spark that lights a fire. So you damage it in one place, and there's a chain reaction. It damages the one next to it or close by to it. And if you have a lot of these polyunsaturated fats in the body, you can light the spark of inflammation, and it's like a wildfire, easy to light, not easy to extinguish. So this is much more of a problem if you're less healthy, if you have more, more toxins in the body, poorer diet, if you have less of an antioxidant capacity, that becomes a problem. So the healthier you are, the more of these you can eat and not feel the effects. Conversely, the more of these you eat, likely the less healthy you will become over time. So I would not recommend doing that either.
Mhm.
I hope that wasn't too convoluted.
It was a clarification for sure. Okay, so now let's talk about the test. You mentioned you sent one of your clients to do a test of their hairs. What are the kinds of tests you recommend people to go through to determine whether they're depleted in minerals, or whatever other tests you ask your clients to do to begin with?
Yeah, this is my favorite part really of the process. I love getting the data and especially showing people, especially when they come to me with some fairly serious or chronic or complex health problem, and they see the lab work and they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. My favorite test is called the organic acids test. This is a simple urine collection. You do it at home. The courier picks it up. We ship it off to the States, and then a couple of weeks later, we get the results. And with this test, we see, we get a snapshot of various metabolic areas. So we see if you have yeast overgrowth, fungal stuff like certain mold, certain bacterial markers, and basically we can see, is there a state of dysbiosis in the gut? It's not very specific like a stool test. A stool test will tell us specific organisms, parasites, worms, protozoa, bacteria, and so on. Whereas this will tell us certain bacteria, certain Clostridia species, but it's more of a general, are you in dysbiosis or not, and is there yeast overgrowth or not? So that's the first page of that test, and it's really useful. Then it also tells us certain B vitamins, what your status of those is, that antioxidant glutathione that I was talking about. It will show us, are you deficient, which is usually an indication you're probably not eating enough protein or not getting enough glycine in the diet, or you're under a lot of toxic load, which could also be due to dysbiosis, because that there's also creates a burden of toxins in the body. We also see, how are you producing energy? Is there any blockages along the fairly complex energy production pathways? So we can see a snapshot of mitochondrial function. We can see certain neurotransmitter metabolites, like for serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline. And then there's other things like oxalates. If you have very high oxalates, usually it can be from fungal infections or overgrowths. It can also be from dietary things. And as I mentioned earlier, things like spinach, grains, they're high in oxalates, which can be very damaging to the body. So these are some of the things we can test with one simple test. And this is the one I usually run on most people, unless we suspect there's an overt gut problem. In that case, we go straight for the stool test and figure out, what are we dealing with? Is it H. pylori in the stomach? Is it a parasite? Is it protozoa? Because that really changes slightly the approach. If you have some protozoa or some parasites, they can travel up your bile ducts and go camp out in your liver, your gallbladder. So we need to then do liver flushes and stuff like that. With parasites, we have to have a really long protocol because they have a very sort of long life cycle, and we want to interrupt that life cycle in all stages.
Mhm.
and then follow up probably with another protocol. So that's, and we also do a comprehensive hormone, and it's a comprehensive sex hormones and adrenal hormones test. This is actually another very interesting test. So we can check a person. We can, you do 4 or 5 collections during the day. You pee on some paper and you ship it off to the lab, and we can see your morning cortisol. Is it high? Is it low? Your afternoon, evening, and your basically your overnight cortisol. When we see your pattern, so in the morning you want your cortisol to spike up, wake you up, get you going, and it goes up, and then you want it to taper down, and at night you want it to be fairly low. So with this test, very often I see on clients, they wake up and their cortisol at night was very high, and then they complain of fatigue, not able to sleep, worry, some thoughts, general malaise. I'm like, well, look, here's the evidence that we need to figure out something at night is keeping you up. What is that? Is it blood sugar problems? Is it, are you eating enough carbohydrates? Could it be parasites? Could it be gut dysbiosis? And then we also see the sex hormones, so your testosterone, androgens. Which pathways are you metabolizing them in? Estrogens, are you metabolizing your estrogens down the healthy protective pathway or down the potentially carcinogenic pathways? And then there's other organic acids tests that are similar to the organic acids test for neurotransmitters, B vitamins, neuroinflammation. That's actually another marker that both of these tests can test for. And I've actually caught in a few clients, we've caught this marker of neuroinflammation that was elevated, and that's really often when people are experiencing brain fog and things like that. It's really an indicator that there is a lot of toxicity going on. If we do like a hair test to test for toxic metals and just nutrient elements, we often see elevations in toxic metals. So when we see this data, people really kind of grasp why the program and the supplement protocol and the dietary things and the lifestyle things that I recommend are so comprehensive and sophisticated. It's not like, oh, just don't eat this, try to sleep more, and then take a multivitamin. No. We target every one of these things in a sort of a sophisticated way, so that the whole organism has everything it needs to heal and then start, trending towards optimal health, which is always the end goal that we want to get to. So those are my favorite ones. And then, of course, we can do more complex things, like we can test for autoimmune antibodies in some cases. We can test for chemical toxins in the urine. There's just really the kind of, there's a lot of things we can do, but those would be my bread and butter.
I am impressed by the depth of your knowledge. I didn't expect you're like more knowledgeable than a doctor, it seems.
Thank you.
How long are your protocols normally? And it's not just a protocol. I understand it's an overall change of lifestyle and nutrition, but how long are, I mean, I understand that it's also dependent on the type of issue that the person has. But what should people expect in terms of length?
So I offer 3, 6, and 12-month programs, but we're quite flexible usually. For example, I also offer, excuse me, I offer my 12-month support package. I offer, let's say, a mom and her kid, or a husband and a wife to work with me to kind of to help them both. Because if you're working with one person, they have to change some dietary things. So then if you work with both of them, you can convince both of them why it's important. So usually I prefer 6 to 12 months. We can get a lot of really good work done. With some clients, they, after like 3 or 4 sessions, there's such a huge improvement that they want to like start working them. Let's say it's a mom for her child. I remember one client, we did one session. The child had a lot of issues, including she couldn't sleep. So we did one session, and then the next time we met, she said, "Oh my God, all those things you said worked. She's sleeping like a baby now." And so she was super impressed, So sometimes they're happy with how it works for their kid or themselves, and they get their partner on board or something like that. And then sometimes they don't, just after a few sessions, people bounce so well that we don't want to complete the whole thing in 6 months. I say, look, let's extend the package for a year, and then we'll meet every 2 months, and then I can give you any tips or whatever you need. But then other people need a lot of support. So some of my clients, they're tracking every single meal, what they're eating, what they're drinking, and every supplement they're taking at which time of day, because they have very sensitive guts or a lot of fatigue or a lot of health problems from being, for example, having a vaccination or two, or um, being a former vegan or vegetarian or whatever else, right? So with those, we go really meticulous, and then I look over the diet logs, and I comment here, you may try this, or try this next time, or maybe remove this for a while. So the best, I find the best results are usually 6 to 12 months. Usually at that point, I've taught people all they need to know to continue the process themselves. But some people choose to stick around more because it's such a fun process.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Is there any case that stands out where you can say they had a serious issue, that's what they did approximately, and that is the result?
I mean, I had one lady that I think she had something like 10 or 11 mercury fillings, and she was having a lot of health problems, and just mood and everything. And in 2-3 months now, she's just sending me little updates, and like, oh, my mood is so much better, and like with 11 mercury amalgams. I had 4. I had them taken out 2 months ago, but she also had 4 of them, or something like 4 of them, removed in the bad way, not without following the safe protocol. And that's when a lot of the health problem starts. We're talking about a lot of mercury toxicity, so that can be really debilitating. But now she's like really doing well, and it's quite amazing, even with a lot of health problems, what in 3 months where we can get people. And usually it's not where you totally want to be, but to get someone from a place of just almost a depressed state, to get them to where, like, oh, I have energy to do this, I have energy to do that, I'm working more, I'm exercising more. To get them to that state is already so satisfying, and then the rest just becomes easier, because they have not only trust in me, but they have trust in their body that they can feel better, and it can rapidly improve. Things can rapidly improve. So that's just one example, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Christian, I would like to go deep at some point, talking about parasites and fungi, candida, all kinds of stuff, because this is claimed to be the cause of, to a large extent. I mean, there are a lot of claims to the crab disease. I'm not even allowed to mention it on YouTube anymore. I don't know if you know that.
No.
I mean, it can be mentioned, but not in relation to giving advice. So
crab disease, huh?
Yes, this is it's become really strict now.
Wow.
But in any case, there seems to be a correlation between the presence of parasites and candida and other fungus in the body and this disease. So I'd like to hear your take on this, but I suggest we leave it for another session, the parasite part, because we've already gone we've made it quite a comprehensive talk already.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, we can briefly discuss some basics around it. It's
Mm-hmm.
such a rabbit hole. What I find, I'll tell you, this is the most interesting thing, right? What I find is pretty much every single person that I've worked with has had some type of gut problem that we uncovered with testing. Now, some people come directly with gut problems. We expect to find them, but someone with fatigue, just with like general, or someone that just wants to optimize, quote unquote, optimize their health, and check where they're at and all that stuff. We invariably find, at the very least, candida overgrowth. So it seems like most people nowadays are living with gut problems, and the healthier amongst us, because the immune system is in good nick, and we have healthy habits and lifestyle and rest well and blah blah blah, we are able to keep these things under control. But the problem is when you become immunocompromised. Let's say you you get sick, or you eat something bad, or you catch something, or you go do a marathon. Like that's another thing that can really perturb the gut. And then when you're in that compromised place, certain things that may already be in the gut can overgrow. So we actually test for certain potential autoimmune triggers. They're known as certain bacteria that are there. They're not considered beneficial, but they're not considered pathogenic unless the balance of the microbiota is disturbed, like by some of these things. And certain chemicals can also do that, like certain drugs and stuff like that. So that is when a lot of people's you can get into a state where now these guys overwhelm the commensals, like the lactobacillus, the bifidobacterium. At that point, when you're in a state of inflammatory dysbiosis, then you can start slowly or quickly developing food intolerances. Your gut can become more permeable or leaky, as it's known, leaky gut. Then more if the inflammation has damaged some of your intestinal cells, some of the food might not get digested properly, and then those undigested particles can get into the bloodstream from the gut. That's where the immune system comes into play. We can have more inflammation. We can have some of these can damage our tissues, or they can get lodged into the tissues, or they can look like our own tissues. And in all of those cases, we create antibodies, and then we either attack our own tissues, or we can if it's lodged in our tissue, we can damage our own tissue. So this just creates a vicious cycle. And over time, the blood-brain barrier can also get compromised, because certain proteins that keep our gut cells together, those junctions, they're actually the same up in the blood-brain barrier. So if you have that piece of protein broken into the bloodstream, and you create an antibody for it, and that antibody is now near the blood-brain barrier, and it recognizes that part of the blood-brain barrier as that antigen or that pathogen, it will start inflaming and attacking the blood-brain barrier. So once you open the blood-brain barrier, then all of these other toxic things that are now into the bloodstream, because the gut barrier is compromised, now they can get into our brain and nervous system. And this is where, again, things like if someone is reporting brain fog, or overt things like, I can't remember something or other, what was his name or her name, or what was that thing, I'm searching for a word. Well, this is early indicators of some type of brain damage, literally brain damage. We can call it nicer things like neuroinflammation and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, this is brain damage that the body will try to repair, but over time, more and more bigger sections of connected neurons get damaged, and then eventually it will be ataxia, where you movement coordination get affected. Everything that is controlled by the brain can at some point be affected by this neurodegeneration. So this is what a compromised gut can do, and the wrong bacteria in the gut can exacerbate. So cleaning up the diet should be in today's world, it should be a no-brainer. Obviously all the processed foods have a lot of chemicals that we want to avoid, but a little tip for the listeners: if you can buy some activated charcoal and use it even once a week, but 2, maybe 3 times a week on an empty stomach, 2-3 capsules with a glass of water. I like to do it last thing at night, sometimes first thing in the morning. If you have these bacteria that shouldn't be there, or shouldn't be there in very high numbers, creating these toxins, they're called endotoxins, the charcoal will mop those up quite well. So and if you take charcoal and you visibly, noticeably feel better, let's say half a day later or a few hours later, it's probably indicative that you have too much endotoxin circulating. If you suddenly your mind is clear, your mood is uplifted, you have more energy after you took the charcoal, it probably means, yes, maybe taking charcoal more regularly is a good idea, but it probably means you want to do some gut cleansing protocol, maybe with some herbs, even like old school in Bulgaria. We were always eating garlic in the winter times. I don't know if you did that, Zorina, but
I
this is
love
something.
garlic. I eat
Oh
garlic
yeah,
regularly.
that's yeah. It's one of the earliest things I remember. My granddad would eat it raw. I would like wrap it in a piece of white bread and chew it. So now, when my daughter is sick, which doesn't happen too often, touch wood, we chop garlic, leave it for 10 minutes, and then put some honey in it, and then we all have a little bit of honey. And then we also do the one we do on Christmas Eve with chopped walnuts, some occasionally, and that's just a delicious way to get some antimicrobial action into your gut. And also honey has some certain antifungal and antibacterial properties. So point being is, a lot of us have these gut problems, and starting with charcoal is a good way to just, it's like an insurance policy. If you have something going on, you're gonna mop up some of the toxins. Give yourself a break.
Yeah. Wow. So, are there any fixed protocols that people can purchase from your website, or do you only do individual consultations based on the particular case?
For now, I'm only working for 3, 6, and 12 months. Soon I'll have you can just buy one session. We do a lot of the analysis as well, but it will be for like brain health and mental performance optimization, for sleep. And then I'm hoping at some point to have a kind of a DIY gut fix your gut program that maybe we'll have like 1 or 2 consultations with it. But for now, if someone has like the way I see it, if you have a fairly serious chronic health problem, working for less than 3 months with somebody is a little bit it won't be, you won't get the results you want. So I prefer we get better results if we work with people for at least 3 months.
I see. Where can people find you? What is the name of your website, or do they just Google your name?
My name is my website, so usually people just Google it, but if you go to christianyordanov.com, you can find my website there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this comprehensive deep dive into toxicity, leaky gut, supplements, detoxification. I don't know what else we covered.
Vaccines.
Neurodegenerative diseases.
Are we even allowed to say that word? Should we say something else like quaxines or
yes,
GB jabs? I don't know. Well, thank you. This was a pleasure to talk to you. And I know I sometimes talk a bit fast because I'm always so excited for interviews. So to the listeners, I apologize if I went a little bit too fast and too technical, but it's important information.
I agree. It's important information. And for anybody who is suffering from these, they can actually look up all the terminology that you throw out if they don't know it. So
yeah,
they can get informed. Thank you so much, Christian.
Thank you, Zorina.
It was very useful. Thank you.